You know the history. As the Israeli Prime Minister called Rouhani as a wolf in sheep's clothing, that this is what they do. They double play. They play for time. While they keep producing, they try to win the confidence of the West. This is what they do. They double play. They play for time. While they keep producing, they try to win the confidence of the West.
That is not the fear around the table. And I'd say a number of nations, not just the French, but ourselves and others, wanted to make sure that we had the tough language necessary, the clarity in the language necessary to be absolutely certain that we were doing the job and not granting more or doing something sloppily that could wind up with we're doing the job and not granting more or doing something sloppily that could wind up with
the Malzberg Show. That again, John Kerry, this time on Meet the Press. And joining us now is our friend, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, Fox News strategic analyst, best-selling author, and, of course, the latest great novel is Hell or Richmond, a brutally realist Civil War novel. Ralph, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm fine. Great to talk to you, Steve, and I wish a fine Veterans Day to all those who have served and are serving.
Yes, I was just going to wish you the happy Veterans Day, and we did a segment at the beginning of the show, some uplifting stories and also some reality stories
Steve,
that hit home.
Steve, I know you've always supported the troops.
Yeah, no, and I thank you for coming on Veterans Day, Ralph. And let's talk about what you just heard from John Kerry and what has been going on and what Benjamin Netanyahu calls a great deal for Iran that seemingly is whether it's in a month or a week or whatever, is about to be struck.
You know, I'm not sure whether to be more struck by John Kerry's weakness, his lack of moral fiber, or his duplicity. I mean, this guy, or disingenuousness at least. I mean, clearly, he was dying to sign any treaty in Geneva. The French, God bless them, who'd have thunk it, said, no, this is a bad deal. This is a bad deal. And then Kerry and the other allies, they went back to the Iranians the last time with the insistence, with the points the French insisted on, and the Iranians wouldn't go for it because the Iranians wanted everything for free. And that's the key here. You know, it's perverse, Steve. We've got the Iranians over a barrel. Sanctions are working in this particular case. Iran's economy is staggering and stumbling. It's going to its knees. The only reason the Iranians have come to the bargaining table or to the negotiating table is because they are hurting badly economically, and they're worried about domestic unrest. But the Iranians want to be rewarded just for talking. And the deal before the French said no, the deal was going to be that we would loosen up sanctions, we'd release Iranian funds, tens of millions of dollars that have been frozen internationally. In fact, some numbers go up to $50 billion, some of the estimates. And all the Iranians would give us would be a promise to suspend uranium enrichment. They would not destroy any centrifuges. They would not give up any of their enriched uranium stockpiles. They would not stop work on the Arak, that's A-R-A-K, plutonium reactor, which is scheduled to go online late next year. And, you know, with plutonium, you don't have to go through the enrichment process. That's bomb-grade stuff right there. So the Iranians were not going to give anything except they were going to let John Kerry and his counterparts and President Obama wave a piece of paper guaranteeing peace in our time. I mean, it's crazy to me that when we've got the Iranians on the ropes, we're willing to let them up just because they're willing to talk to us. Nuts, crazy. And by the way, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel is 100% right. This is a bad deal.
We're talking to Ralph Peters here on the Steve Malzberg Show. So why? I think you're right. I mean, I think anything that he could sign, anything that Obama could hold up and say, look what we did, as a distraction to what's going on elsewhere in his administration. But also, this is something he has wanted from day one. He was willing, and not back to day one, but he was willing more recently at the UN a few weeks ago to shake the Iranian president's hand, a hand that is stained with American blood, the president of a country that is the #1 supporter and perpetrator of terror in the world, and he wanted to shake his hand. Now he wants to capitulate to him at the bargaining table or the negotiating table, as you so rightfully said. it's obscene. And what do you think the motivation is?
Well, I think you just hit it. The Obamacare has been such a disaster that the administration is desperate for anything that appears to be a win, even in foreign policy, which isn't really Obama's sphere. And John Kerry, you get the feeling that he's really interested in his personal legacy. He's going to solve the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Well, good luck. He's going to bring us a treaty with Iran. And the doggone thing is, Steve, look, I don't want a war with Iran. I would be all for a sane, sensible treaty that permanently derailed Iran's nuclear program. I am not for a treaty that gives Iran breathing room to develop nuclear weapons, and all we get's a piece of paper. You know, we should get Terry a T-shirt. You know, that says, "I went to Geneva, and all and all Obama got was this lousy piece of paper."
That would be a very apropos T-shirt. Yeah,
Steve, really, though, think about it. What a scene that must have been. What a shock for Kerry when Laurent Fabius, the French foreign minister, is the guy that says, "No, this is a bad deal, and France won't sign." I mean, Kerry must have been like a deer in the headlights. But Laurent, I speak French.
I was going to say, especially since Kerry fancies himself as a Frenchman.
Yeah, well, it's funny though. The thing is, of course, 10 years ago we were all down on the French because they frankly screwed us. But there are no permanent allies, and there don't have to be permanent enemies. In the real world, the French are really tough when it comes to what they perceive as their own interests. And I wish we acted in our own interests a little more instead of trying to be perfect saints among the devils.
Yeah, look what France is doing within their own country when it comes to Islam and immigrants and adopting the patriotism of France. And if you want your own little culture, get out of the country. I mean, they've really stepped up in that regard.
Yeah, and this is a socialist president in France. And the point isn't that France has moved to the right. It's that the Obama administration has moved so far to the left that the French are now on the right.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. We're talking to Ralph Peters, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, of course, U.S. Army, Fox News strategic analyst, and author of Hell or Richmond, best-selling author. That's the latest. A great, great, great novel about the Civil War. So let me ask you, so when you heard David Gregory, of all people, try to, lay down how it is, or at least to play devil's advocate to Kerry, probably is what he was doing, saying that, many people say Iran is just playing their old games, they're delaying. And Kerry says that is not the fear around the table. Based on what? How could that not be the fear? What has Iran done ever since the takeover of our embassy? What have they ever done to gain trust?
Well, I think this is like the beginning of a really bad romance when people are first together and one is utterly duplicitous, but the other refuses to see it because they're so starry-eyed and struck. And I think Obama and Kerry are both really starry-eyed about the idea that Iran may finally be willing to give us a kiss in the cheek. So we're gonna hand over everything we've got, including the deed to the house. It's just a crazy situation. Kerry and Obama are now both desperate to rescue their legacies, and I expect them to continue to try to do stupid things in the future. And oh, by the way, one thing that was pretty much missed by the media was how once again, we kowtowed to the Saudis. The Saudis just started. They were angry. They threw a hissy fit because they weren't getting their way the way they're accustomed to, and John Kerry went running to grovel before the king of Saudi Arabia, and it's just pathetic. I mean, Obama, as I've said for many years now, Obama doesn't have a foreign policy. He's just in constant reaction mode. What he's got is a whole bunch of tangled up, confused prejudices, such as his prejudice against Israel, right. And prejudice is not a strategy.
And his love affair with the Muslim Brotherhood too.
Yeah, I mean it's really sad, but there's no denying that President Obama doesn't like Israel. He comes out of that South Chicago milieu of Bill Ayers and the Reverend Wright.
Rashid Khalidi at Columbia.
Right, of course. And for these people, Israel is the evil imperialist. These 6 million Israelis, including 2 million Arabs, they're the bad guys, but 450 million Arabs and the Persian Iranians around them who want to exterminate them, they're freedom fighters.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolute madness. But I hate to say it, but I think if Israel disappeared tomorrow, Obama wouldn't shed a tear unless it was for the cameras. These people, Obama and those around him, regard Israel as an annoyance, and it is our only ally in the Middle East. It is an outpost of our civilization, and it's, by the way, the only rule of law democracy between Morocco and Japan, or at least between Morocco and India.
Let me give you one more, Ralph, real quick. On Wednesday, Samantha Power, our UN ambassador, said that, what she did basically was she said it was a huge honor to share the stage with Jane Fonda, speaking at the United Nations Association of the USA 2013 Global Leadership Awards in New York. So, I've spoken to several of Vietnam vets who already are very outraged at that and consider it a huge slap in the face.
Yeah, I have to say, though, Jane Fonda is just pathetic. Samantha Power is dangerous.
That's you know what? That's a perfect way to end it, my friend. Hey, happy Veterans Day to you and to all of your wonderful friends and colleagues and comrades. And we'll speak to you soon. Thanks for taking the time today.
Always great to speak with you.
Thank
Steve.
you. That's Colonel Ralph Peters, Fox News strategic analyst, author of Hell or Richmond. Especially if you're into the Civil War, even if you're not, but if you're into the Civil War. Man, he has a series of novels out, but Hell or Richmond is the latest one. It is fascinating. And, if you know a Civil War buff, I do, you got to get Ralph Peters' novels on the Civil War, and Hell or Richmond is a great place to start. And you could always backtrack if you want. But great, award-winning, best-selling author, and just such an intelligent man who's been there. I mean, he takes trips. Sometimes we call him. He's overseas. He's never resting on his laurels, so to speak, as far as knowing what's going on. He's always going back. And great historian and great military analyst and strategic analyst for Fox, obviously. It is frightening. It is very, very frightening. And what he just said about Samantha Power, Jane Fonda's pathetic. Samantha Power is dangerous. Yep, but Samantha Power is just an extension of Barack Obama. And what Ralph Peters said about Barack Obama, what he just said about Barack Obama, that if Israel disappeared tomorrow, Obama wouldn't shed a tear except in public. I got to tell you, I think there's a lot of credibility to that. I've seen nothing to indicate otherwise. I see nothing to indicate otherwise. He's treated Netanyahu and Israel like garbage since day one. Israel is the one, like Ralph Peters said, the one country they view as imperialists who they could actually get. They can't get Great Britain. They can't get the other nations that they believe are imperialist nations. I mean, we're probably an imperialist nation to Obama, too. So he's getting us. But they can really get Israel and put the hammer down. And that's what they're doing. That's why Kerry's scolding Netanyahu in public. When we come back, wait till you hear what Bill Maher said about Christians. Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.